My name is Alma Arara Mountain, and my world split cleanly into before and after the year I turned 13. If you need the precise moment my family decided I was background scenery in my own story, it wasn't a slow dawning. It was a sticky note on the fridge, written in my mother's graceful, indifferent hand. Stay at a friend's. Back in a week. Love you. No signature. No explanation. They left for Florida the morning of my birthday. My sister Jasmine posted a picture of her pink suitcase with a caption about family time. Lily added palm tree emojis. I sat on the porch with my backpack on my knees, waiting for someone, an aunt, a neighbor, a stroke of luck, to show up and tell me it was a joke. No one came. By the time the streetlights flickered on, a dog was barking at me like I was a stranger on my own steps. I ate a burrito I didn't like, listening to the microwave hum like it was trying to keep me company. After 2 days, I still called it a mistake. By the fourth, a colder thought began to whisper, maybe it wasn't. Being the middle child had always meant being the quiet bridge between the star and the encore. Jasmine had trophies. Lily had glitter and parties. I had responsible, a word adults used to mean unseen, but being forgotten on purpose introduced a whole new kind of silence. On the 6th day, I was walking home from the library, a tower of books stacked in my arms like armor, when a glossy black car slid to the curb, the window lowered. Alma. It was Uncle Richard, the rich one who'd vanished from family holidays before I could multiply double digits. Mom called him conceited. I now think her word, for he keeps his boundaries. His gaze took in my sweaty hair, my backpack, the tight smile I wore as a shield. Why are you out here alone? Where are your parents? Florida, I said. The word hung in the air. Ridiculous. And you're here. He said it more to himself than to me. Then, quietly, get in. You're not walking anywhere tonight. Every stranger danger lecture echoed in my head, but my stomach, after days of instant noodles, argued louder. Hunger, I decided, was its own kind of danger. His car smelled of leather and something sharp and clean, the scent of money that hasn't gone stale. He drove to a diner with cracked red booths and pies under glass domes. When the burger and milkshake came, I stared at them like they might disappear. He didn't make me talk. He let me eat first, then asked about school, friends, what I cared about. History, I said, the parts everyone gets wrong. That made him smile, as if I'd handed him a small secret. When he pulled onto my street, he didn't park, just idled and said, go pack a bag. I blinked. What? You're not staying alone on a sofa while your parents shop for sunscreen. Pack, Alma. Some moments open the world on hidden hinges. His house was one of them. The guest bed looked too soft to touch. I perched on the edge, afraid to wrinkle the comforter. He leaned in the doorway, planning to sleep sitting up forever? I whispered that I didn't want to mess up his sheets. They can be washed, he said, and his half-smile held warmth, not mockery. Things exist to be used, not feared. Morning brought orange juice in a real glass. At home, our cups were faded plastic souvenirs. I held his like it might break from a wrong look. It's just juice, not a legal agreement, he said. Drink. When my teacher asked who'd attend the parent conference, he didn't hesitate. I will. 2 words, steady as stone, and something clenched inside me for months began to loosen. I didn't know what to do with generosity. When he bought me jeans, I hid the tags. Sure, he'd want them back. When he gave me lunch money, I saved it and ate crackers. Spending felt like trespassing. 12 days in, he found me in the kitchen at midnight, hunched over a cereal box. Why? He said from the doorway. Rehearsing to be a raccoon? I told him I didn't want to take too much. He warmed leftover pasta, pushed the bowl toward me. If it's in this house, it belongs to everyone who lives here. That means you, too. I nodded, swallowing hard, determined not to let tears fall into the noodles. Crying felt too extravagant, too much like debt. Weeks passed without a knock, a call, a text. Jasmine posted beach pictures captioned Eternal Sisterhood. Lily posed with shells pressed to her cheek. My name never appeared. Uncle Richard took notes at the school meeting where the counselor called me quiet and underengaged. Afterward, he bought me a desk, a place to study that wasn't the floor. He scheduled eye exams, dentist appointments, a haircut. He called it maintenance, as though I was someone worth keeping in working order. I tested limits. Of course. Once, I came home late without texting, braced for anger. He handed me a sandwich. Glad you're alive. Next time, send a message. Otherwise I'll assume you're in a ditch and go buy a shovel. His even tone was more disarming than shouting. It sounded like care, with structure. Not everything was rules. Sometimes he'd bring me to his office. Watch how people speak. He'd murmur. Half of success is tone and handshake. The rest is showing up when everyone else makes excuses. He said it lightly, but it stuck, a map I didn't know I needed. That first holiday under his roof, I expected a polite card. Instead, he gave me a leather journal, my initials pressed into the cover in gold. Write down what you notice, he said, even the silly things, especially those. Later, my phone buzzed. A photo of my parents and sisters in matching pajamas by a perfect tree. Mountain traditions. The caption read, "No tag. No, we miss you." I opened the journal to the first page. I wrote, "Things here are meant to be used, not feared. If something is inside this house, it belongs to everyone who lives within it. I am in this house." The words looked bold, like borrowed courage, but when I closed the cover and traced my initials, something warm and faint stirred inside. Not safety yet, but its outline, drawn in pencil. I didn't know then that the diner booth and this little book would become the hinges of my life. That years later, in a room smelling of leather and law, these pages would be my backbone. For now, I was just 13, curled in sheets that whispered clean instead of weary, learning one impossible truth. I wasn't disposable. I hadn't been forgotten, only misplaced. And someone had finally found my tab and slid me where I belonged. I kept that note from my 13th birthday taped inside my planner for all 4 years of college. It was my quiet fuel. Those first months were rough. I felt like a trespasser in lecture halls, the girl with second-hand shoes and laundry-scented tote bags moving through a sea of luxury backpacks. But every Sunday, Uncle Richard's call was my gravity. Miss Dean's list. He'd tease. Still running on ramen and resolve? Barely. I'd say, good. He'd reply, hunger sharpens the mind. That rhythm held me steady. I met Ethan Cole my sophomore year at a community garden. He was the kind of person who made a room feel calmer. He found me fumbling with a shovel, offered to help, and earned my eye roll before earning my trust. We took it slow. He wasn't a savior. He was a witness. Once, during finals, he asked why I triple-checked every detail. I told him, because for a long time, I was the oversight no one corrected. He just took my hand. Then let's make sure you're never an oversight again. In that moment, I felt truly seen, not as a leftover, but as a light I'd built myself. Then, junior year, an old ghost drifted back in. Sabrina, Ethan's ex, returned to campus with polished smiles and strategic compliments, her eyes always scanning for an audience. When I learned they'd met for coffee so he could advise her on a business plan, that ancient sting of replacement flared. But instead of accusation or pleading, I heard Uncle Richard's voice. Half the world bluffs, the other half apologizes for existing. Do neither. I simply told Ethan, next time, let her find someone else's counsel. He nodded, earnest and unflinching. His quiet understanding meant more than any grand gesture. By graduation, everything felt aligned. I earned my degree in civil engineering, the art of building what endures, as Richard called it. He sat front row, clapping with a force that turned heads. Afterward, he pressed a simple silver pen into my hand. For signing contracts you'll be proud of. I smiled. Not my autograph? He chuckled. Build first, brag later. That night, while others celebrated, I stayed in my dorm, tracing the filled pages of the journal he'd given me at 13. One line pulsed like a heartbeat. If it's in this house, it belongs to the people in this house. That house was no longer a place. It was my life, and I was finally living inside it. I joined a small engineering firm. Ethan found work nearby. Our lives built a steady, quiet rhythm. Every Friday, Richard and I had dinner. He'd lift his whiskey and say, "Look at you, Miss Mountain, climbing without looking down." I'd laugh and reply, "Give it time, I still trip." But I was too busy building to see the cracks in my foundation, the new fatigue in his voice, the slight tremor in his hands, the stories he told twice. The strongest people don't shatter. They fade, quietly, until you realize you've been holding what they can no longer carry. He began canceling our dinners, citing a brutal workload, a phrase he'd never used before. One evening, I found him asleep in his armchair at 8, the TV murmuring to an empty room. When he startled awake, his smile was too quick, too thin. Long day, he said, blinked too long. The signs gathered, prescription bottles, a hand that wavered pouring coffee. We entered a silent pact of pretense. Yet he still offered his steadying wisdom. After I vented about a difficult client, he said, "Jobs replace you in a week. The right people won't replace you at all." I didn't know he was preparing me for a world without him. Then, on a Tuesday, the call came. His assistant, Grace, voice trembling. He collapsed. "They've taken him to St. Luke's." The drive was a blur of light and panic. In his hospital room, he looked small against all that white, but his grin was still crooked. "Don't look so grim. I just wanted a free night's stay." I tried to laugh. "You scared me." He shrugged faintly. "First time for everything." Then, softer, "Sit, kid." When the room grew still, he said, "I always thought your father would teach you how to stand tall, how to manage money, but I'm glad it was me." "Don't," I whispered. "Don't what?" "Be honest?" He took my hand. A rare gesture. "You've exceeded every expectation anyone ever had for you, Alma. Just remember, you were never the extra piece." Tears threatened. He smirked. "You ruin these sheets. You're paying the dry cleaning bill." I laughed. And for a moment, the world righted itself. He came home slower, quieter. We never spoke of the scare again, but the air between us had changed. That final Christmas, he gave me a gold-wrapped box. Inside was the same leather journal, now filled with notes, advice, bad sketches, even taped receipts scribbled with comments like, "Best burger of 2014, still not worth the calories." On the last page, his handwriting trembled but held firm. "If they ever try to erase you again, remember this, you've already written your own chapter." I looked up, throat tight. "You've been writing in this all along?" He shrugged. "Couldn't let you keep all the good lines." I hugged him, really hugged him. He chuckled. "Easy, you'll break a rib." But I held on, already mourning the sound of that laugh in an empty room. Months later, the call came at dawn. Grace's voice, shattered. "He's gone, Alma." In his sleep. The world went silent. I sat on the edge of my bed, numb, staring at a wall that refused to make sense. The days blurred into a harsh logistics of loss. He'd named me executor. Of course he had. I knew which tie was his serious one, which song made him grimace, that he hated lilies and preferred simple white roses. The service was small, elegant, and then they arrived. My parents, Jasmine, and Lily swept into the chapel like it was a premiere. My mother hid behind sunglasses large enough to conceal a conscience. My father shook hands, offering solemn platitudes about a loss to the family he hadn't spoken to in 15 years. When they saw me, their faces cycled through shock, guilt, and calculation. "Alma," my mother gasped, clutching my hand. "We had no idea you were so close." I withdrew gently. "You never asked." My father cleared his throat. "Your uncle was an extraordinary man, always part of the family." That word, family, hung in the air, bitter and hollow. Jasmine's voice cut through, sweet and sharp. "Do you know when the will's being read?" Uncle Richard was comfortable. Lily sighed, adjusting her pearls. "I just hope he wanted to keep the family legacy together." They hadn't even buried him, and they were already circling. I turned and walked away. The messages began within the week. My mother's faux warm voicemails. Jasmine's DM, "We should talk about estate matters." Lily's grief-themed emoji. When Mr. Halpern, Richard's attorney, called to schedule the reading, his tone was solemn. "It may be eventful." He was very specific. The law office smelled of leather, old wood, and quiet consequence. My family sat across the mahogany table, a portrait of performative grief. I sat alone, my journal on my lap, no armor needed. Halpern read through the formalities. My family fidgeted, their patience a thin veneer. Then he turned the page, to my estranged relatives, who remembered me only when my bank balance suited their needs. I leave nothing. The silence was a physical crack. Lily whispered. He's joking, right? Halpern continued, unwavering. To my niece, Alma Mountain. Abandoned at 13 but never absent since. I leave the entirety of my estate, all assets, properties, and holdings. The air left the room. Then, 4 pairs of eyes, sharp with disbelief, locked onto me. Jasmine shattered the quiet. That's impossible. He barely knew her. He knew me for 15 years, I said, my voice steady. You just stopped paying attention. My father's face darkened. You poisoned him against us. No, I said, resting a hand on my journal. You did that, the day you left me with a note on a fridge. Lily tried sweetness. Alma, be reasonable. We're family. I almost smiled. 15 years of silence isn't family. It's strangers with the same last name. Halpern closed the folder with a definitive snap. The will is uncontestable. Mr. Carlton was exceedingly clear. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The disbelief on their faces curdled into a familiar, furious resentment, the look they wore when they realized I no longer needed their permission to exist. I stood. If you'll excuse me, I have things to manage. Jasmine hissed. This isn't over. I met her gaze, calm and final. It was over when you stopped calling me your sister. Outside, the sunlight was blinding, the air clean and new. I stood on the steps, breathing deeply, the scared 13-year-old on the porch finally stepping into her own horizon. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to no one and everywhere. Wish you could have seen their faces. You were right. I wrote my own chapter. Later, I stood on the balcony of the home he left me, my home, the city lights sprawling below like a galaxy of possibilities. I opened the journal to the last page, to his trembling script. You've already written your own chapter. I did. I whispered to the night, and I'm not done. Ethan joined me, his arm a warm weight around my shoulders. You okay? I leaned into him. Yeah, it just feels like a circle finally closing. He looked out at the shimmering skyline. He'd be proud. I tilted my face to the stars. I think he already was. Below us, the city glittered, each light a period on a sentence, a beginning on the next blank page. The story, now and always, was mine.